Morning, everybody. Happy Easter. And it seems strange to wish you a happy Easter in light of the first story that I have to tell you. But I do have to tell you this story. This is happening in our world, and it seems interesting, the coordination between the attacks that are happening. There have been a whole lot of church burnings across the Western world during this past week, and having an Easter Sunday terrorist attack is, well, awful. And well, CBC News is reporting, quote, suspects arrested after blast kills at least 160 at Sri Lankan churches, hotels. 7 suspects were arrested Sunday following a series of explosions in Sri Lanka, the country's defense minister said, as officials estimated the death toll from the attacks has risen to at least 160 people, with hundreds more injured. I scroll down. Those included more than 30 foreigners, following near simultaneous and coordinated explosions that struck 3 churches and 3 luxury hotels in one of the deadliest blasts in the country's history, government officials said. 3 of the blasts targeted St. Anthony's Church in Colombo, St. Sebastian's Church in the western coast town of Negombo, sorry if I've got that wrong, and another, the Zion Church in the eastern town of Batacala, sorry again if I got that wrong, around 8:45 a.m. local time as the Easter Sunday Mass were in progress, a police spokesperson said. This kind of stuff targeting people at worship is despicable and unbelievable that our world has degenerated into targets like this. Peaceful people worshiping their God shouldn't be targets of terrorist attack, and yet that's exactly what's happening. The churches are being attacked, and now people at Mass are being attacked. And, well, I mean, it's resulting in dead. And this is terrorism at its absolute worst, in my opinion. Back to the article. 3 other explosions were reported from five-star hotels, the Shangri-La, the Cinnamon Grand, and the Kingsbury in Colombo. Foreigners and a local who were injured in the hotel blast were admitted to the Colombo General Hospital. 2 more explosions were reported hours later on the outskirts of Colombo, but the targets were not immediately clear. And no group has claimed responsibility for Sunday's attacks. Here's another source as well, the AFP news agency, and this is where I first saw this. I checked CBC to see if they were reporting on it, and I was surprised that they were, but they were. It was on the front page. And so I'll provide both links. I'm not going to go through both here. This one just goes in a little bit more detail. Again, like I said, these terrorist attacks, these coordinated timing, the churches burning in the West, the explosions attacking these churches here in Sri Lanka, what is going on, and why are these conversations absent in the media? When the news reports are written, yes, it mentions the churches, but it also tries to sanitize things, and it definitely does not connect the dots in a way that any thinking person might, and say, hey, wait a second, we've noticed an uptick in those kind of attacks too. We've had a lot of more arsons or calls to churches, et cetera, across Canada. And that's true, as I've been saying, across the Western world. Why is it going ignored? Why is it being reported as individual attacks or siloed attacks that don't have anything to do with each other? The holiest week of the year for Christians, and their churches are being burned, their churches are being bombed. Does it make sense? Why? What's going on? And why is nobody moving to stop it? And instead saying, nothing to see here, citizen, move on, move along, carry on, go about your day. Hopefully you don't get bombed. So strange. Okay, the next little bit of crime. I talked a lot about 6 months ago about money laundering. Raj Grul was money laundering or was talking about money laundering and FinTrack. And, if I'm money laundering, $10,000 isn't a value that I'm worried about. I'm dealing in $1 million transaction, said Grul during testimony or questioning in the House during one of his committee meetings. And this has been happening a lot. They have the Vancouver method, they being the Chinese triads, and they bring money from China, or they bring drugs from China, sell the money in Vancouver, wash the money in Vancouver real estate and casinos, and then send the money back to China to produce more drugs, to do the system all over again. And I talked about how that inflates our housing market, how that puts dark money or money laundered money into the housing market, and that cleans it, right? Because if you buy a house and sell a house, well, that's an asset. Who needs a mortgage? There's the house, right? There it is. Here's the money for it. So this is another one of those arrows in that quiver. This is yet another example of exactly that system being used to inflate the housing market all across Canada. And well, if you don't think we're in for a shock, if anybody puts an end to this, well, you're in for a shock. Surprise. If all of the criminal money, if all of the money that was being laundered through real estate suddenly stopped through legislation or through a different government that maybe was not as friendly to foreign everything buying up our real estate with their ill-gotten funds, well, there would be a lot less money flowing through Canadian real estate. And they use Canadian real estate as a marker of our economy, of the health of our economy. And already Vancouver's health of its economy is taking a hit because people are really looking at the Vancouver method. So they just move it to a different geographic location. And I've heard Halifax is one place that they're going, and they've always had a presence in Toronto. It's unaffordable to buy a house in Toronto. If you grew up in Toronto, I say this about Vancouver a lot, but my grandmother had a house in Toronto, and my cousin owns that house now. Wonderful for him, but I don't think his kids are going to be able to buy a house around the corner from him, or even in the same city that's not a 50-minute drive away. And is that really how things should be? Should you not be able to afford a house in your community because, well, some people have to launder some money? Is that okay? Is that cool? Let's just turn a blind eye because, it really beefs up our numbers. It makes the Canadian economy look fantastic. Yeah, all these people buying houses. You know what else really improves a housing market and availability of rental units and expensive or affordable homes for families? Importing people from all over the world at a breakneck pace. Or not. Sorry, that's tongue in cheek. I'm getting off topic. Here we go. CBC News reporting Toronto criminals hiding billions of dollars in GTA real estate, watchdog claims. Transparency International Canada claims in a new report that criminals are snowwashing billions of dollars through anonymous purchases of luxury homes in the GTA. What does that mean? Quote, bring your dirty money to Canada and it will be clean like the pure white snow, explains James Cohen of Transparency International. The anti-corruption group, along with Canadians for Tax Fairness and Publish What You Pay Canada, presented their report on the risks of widespread money laundering at a news conference in Queen's Park on Thursday. The report's authors look at some 1.4 million residential property transactions dating back to 2008. Among the group's chief concerns is that the privately owned corporations have spent $28.4 billion on luxury residential homes, those worth 7 to 10 million, over that time frame, and didn't provide enough information about their beneficial owners. Those companies also appear to have paid $9.8 billion in cash for homes, something that could allow them to dodge the scrutiny of financial institutions. Let me just be clear here. When you pay cash for a home, you say, how much does that house cost? $250,000? Here's cash. Cash money, $250,000 all in. Here's a certified check. Boom, done. And then you own the home. They just give you the deed. No, you don't have to qualify. You don't have to do anything. Do you know how easy $250,000 is to come by if you are a big corporation that's looking at cash flow like this, like $9 and $10 million, right? It's pretty easy, and real estate is relatively cheap. So yeah, it does not help the everyday consumer. Okay, back to the article here. When they did require mortgages, half of the borrowing done by corporations was through unregistered lenders that are not subject to anti-money laundering provisions. Transparency found. So the percentage of corporate ownership by property value. So if your property is less than $1 million, there is next to no corporate ownership, and it doesn't give like 0.2% or anything like that. So sorry, I don't have those numbers. But if your property is between $8 and $9 million, well, a lot of the time, half of that is owned by a corporation. And do you think that the corporation maybe also helped with the down payment to get into the luxury apartment? Is it being able to write off on taxes, or is it a corporate perk? I don't know. It's interesting. Back to the article. Report author Adam Ross noted that the Toronto housing market has ranked among the least affordable in the world, with rental properties in short supply and buying a home in the city out of the reach of many. Quote, dirty money exacerbates this affordability crisis by adding extra demand from buyers who have a perceived incentive to overpay for properties in order to wash more dirty money through transactions. None of us want to live next door to a criminal or to a property that sits empty and unmaintained. Ontario's previous Liberal government brought in a foreign buyer's tax in 2017 and instituted audits to discourage speculation. However, it's unclear if that's cutting down on the activity. Ross says lax enforcement of suspected money laundering has encouraged criminals to come here, as such cases rarely go to trial and are often settled out of court if they do. SNC, anybody? SNC? It's been 2015 they were charged, and they're still lobbying the government in order to get out of it. And last story, there's two more stories. This one is man cleared in cyclist death, handed conditional sentence for obstructing justice. The man cleared in the 2015 hit-and-run death of a cyclist has been ordered to perform community service and stick to a curfew for attempting to cover up the incident. Dennisburg St. Hilaire, sorry if I've got that wrong, said he was asleep when he struck Andy Nevin on Leitrim Road in South Ottawa the morning of June 28, 2015. I scroll down. In reading the sentence, Superior Court Justice Catherine Aiken, sorry if I got that wrong, noted that once St. Hilaire realized that he'd been involved in the fatal collision days earlier, he began arranging covert repairs of his truck, covering the vehicle with a tarp, removed the license plates, and having it driven under the cover of darkness to and from a body shop. St. Hilaire checked himself into a hotel after investigators came knocking at his door, asking to see his white Ford pickup truck, which matched the description of the vehicle involved in the collision. While Aiken accepted that St. Hilaire felt remorse, she said his failure to contact police prolonged the suffering of Nevin's family. Yeah, racial fears reasonable, judge agrees. Judge Aiken accepted the defense's argument that as a black man, St. Hilaire, had reason to be concerned about how police would treat him. Quote, Mr. St. Hilaire's actions in obstructing a peace officer were the result of his being overwhelmed with fear of how he would be treated in the justice system, a fear arising in part due to experiences earlier in life when he was subject to bullying and racism in the school context, and due to experiences more recently where he did not feel fairly treated by police officers during traffic stops, Aiken said. In saying this, I'm not suggesting that those fears justify someone obstructing a peace officer, Aiken continued. I'm simply accepting that fear of how he and his family would be treated played a role in Mr. St. Hilaire making the unwise decision not to cooperate with police in their investigation. Well, Mr. Justice of the Peace, where's your name? I can't remember. Hold on. Justice Aiken, sorry, I right at the front there. Justice Aiken, in giving your sentence, in passing your sentence down the way you did, 100 hours of community service for obstructing a justice of the peace officer, for obstructing justice, for having his car repaired, for going to hide out in a hotel. You gave him 100 hours of community service. You basically let him get away with it. You said, yeah, that's fine. He drove 30 kilometers over the speed limit. He drove into somebody who died in a ditch alone, realized he did it, repaired his truck, hid at a hotel when the police came knocking, and admitted to obstructing justice that way. And you say, oh, well, racism. Justice is supposed to be blind to those things, sir. And had anybody else done that, obstructed justice in that way, the full force of the law would be thrown at them, and that would be used to justify the full force of the law being thrown at them. You knew what you did was wrong, and you hid it, and you covered it up. You hid it anyway. And why that's not being applied in this situation, I think most people would be afraid of how the justice system would treat them when they kill somebody and leave them to die in a ditch, right? Most people would be worried about that, regardless of their skin color. So why is this person's skin color of note? Why does this person's skin color get them out of consequences? That is not the Canada that I grew up in. Justice is supposed to be blind to skin color and political position, Mr. Prime Minister. And those things aren't happening in Canada anymore. We have a very clear two-tiered legal system. And this is just yet another example of that two-tiered legal system. And it's frustrating as all get out. And the last one is human trafficking related, and open borders lead to human trafficking. Open borders lead to human trafficking, period. And it frustrates me when people who claim to be lefties and claim to be people who are trying to save humanity and save the world, and why can't you just let the world be a good place, and all these people are benefits to Canada, and blah, 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 blah. Open borders leads to this. Ottawa Citizen reporting, quote, illegal spa busted in downtown Ottawa, man charged with human trafficking. An unlicensed, quote, touch therapy spa in downtown Ottawa has been closed and a man arrested for human trafficking at the end of a lengthy investigation by the Ottawa Police Service Human Trafficking Unit. The investigation was launched after several complaints came forward in May 2018, police said, which led to more alleged victims being identified. As a result of that investigation, the touch therapy spa on Somerset Street West has been closed. Its website billed it as a 24-hour members-only spa providing the ultimate relaxation experience. Juta Preston Downey, 41, of Ottawa, also known as, quote, Lord Downey, was arrested Thursday and charged with assault, sexual assault, 3 counts of human trafficking, and other prostitution-related offenses. Bylaw charges have also been issued, and an unnamed person has been remanded to the custody of the Canadian Border and Services Agency. An unnamed person participating in human trafficking and prostitution has been remanded to the custody. I wonder who that could be. Were they perhaps a victim? I wonder where they came from. I wonder how they got into Canada. I wonder how long they've been here. I wonder how old they are. Back to the article. Sergeant Damien Laflamme, head of the human trafficking unit, called human trafficking, quote, modern-day slavery. Human trafficking, in a nutshell, is a labor and service provided out of fear, he said. In many cases, women and young girls involved in prostitution are forced into the sex trade through violence, coercion, or trickery. Open borders. Bring them in and then exploit them until they're broken or not worth anything, and then discard them and bring in more, and people pay for it. It is happening all over the U.S. southern border, and it is happening in Canada too. It's happening all over the world. It's unbelievable, and open borders facilitates it. How can these people support it? It is incredibly stupid. It shows how little those people understand about how the world works. Okay, that's enough for me. Happy Easter. This was a terrible Easter episode. Like, just awful news after awful news after awful news. So, man, go eat some chocolate and have a good day. Sorry about this. Thanks for watching.